Hi, everyone. We're so happy to have you here today. It's Felicia Saraceno, Everyday Senior News. And today we are going to talk to our special guest. I'm so grateful to have Enita Kushi with Kushi Law Firm right here in Southwest Florida. She's located in Naples. Welcome.
Greetings, everyone.
Yes,
Thank you for having me.
absolutely. Well, we're going to talk about some important topics today, some that you may not have ever thought of in the past. Yeah, no, that's true. Now, on the flip side, at what age should you be thinking about this? Because a lot of times, I think the misconception, and you tell me if it's a misconception or not, they say, "Oh, I'm rounding 50 or 60 years old. I probably should get my ducks in line, get everything set up." But what age should you actually start thinking about your will and advanced directives?
So one of the best things you can do for your children the moment they turn 18 is to have them document who is in charge. Because once your child turns 18,
Mhm.
you and your husband are no longer responsible legally for your child.
Great.
Therefore, if they go away to college and they get sick, unfortunately, or they need someone to act for them, or they
Mhm.
want you to, sell their car in Naples or ship their car or wind down their things in the college where the town they're at. The parent cannot do that unless they legally can do so in writing. Um,
Mm.
the school is not going to talk to you. They're an adult, the college. So at age 18, very, very important that the parent help the child, which is now an adult, have their healthcare agent, their living will, which they're also known as advanced directives,
Mhm.
documented, and their power of attorney. I had a colleague, unfortunately, her daughter, I think she was 23 or 24, got in a very, very bad car accident. Of course, they
Oh.
had never thought about any of this. And if they had, they hadn't documented. And so what happens is the daughter she ended up in a rehab center, and the mother had to set up a guardianship because she could not
Oh.
get rid of her stuff in the apartment. She couldn't sell her car. The daughter could no longer work and go to school. It was a very bad situation. So,
Mm.
what happens at 18, the parent no longer has authority. And so, the only way a parent can then act if their child unfortunately becomes sick or passes away is through court proceeding. So, you avoid that as a parent, and your child is protected so that they can choose who they nominate. And normally, it's the parent, sometimes it's not. But it's normally the parent, so the parent can legally act on their behalf. And it doesn't matter that the child doesn't have assets. We're talking about taking care of the person while they are in this world. Forget what happens if they pass away. As mom and dad, you are no longer able to act for that child at 18. So I
Mhm.
know people wait, oh, well, in my 60s, I can wait a little longer, etc. It is crucial, crucial, because we've had as young, in my office at least, as young as 50 some year old gentleman who had a stroke and he had no planning whatsoever. And interestingly enough, he went to the dentist, needed surgery, and the dentist said, I can't do this. He doesn't have healthcare directives. And because of the stroke, he couldn't communicate his wishes. So it became a difficult situation. And so the younger, especially at 18, you're not thinking about death. You're thinking about planning that if we need to act on behalf of our children, they have someone nominated, whether it's father, mother and father together, an aunt as a backup. The longer you wait, the more exposed you are, because if God forbid you have, for example, a stroke or you get a terminal illness, you should not be thinking about doing planning when you're in the hospital or when you're in the rehab center, or I have people calling me from hospice. That is not the time to be calling a lawyer to do your estate plan. So you want to do it when you're young, healthy,
Mhm.
and you can make decisions without being influenced by people when you're well enough to do so versus waiting for some life event to happen. Honestly, in their 50s, it's too late. People don't understand what happens when they don't do planning. And I don't blame them, because I did not know either. They don't teach us any of these things in law school. Really, they don't. It's more theoretical. So I don't blame my clients when they come. They say, oh my gosh, I've been meaning to do this for years and years and years. So
Yeah.
at
And it
18,
happens.
everyone
It
should do
happens all the time.
this.
And so I think that people need to just have an eye opener. So this would be a good this would be a good little quote. Have a driver's license, you need a will.
And healthcare directives
Yes, yeah.
and power of attorney.
Yeah. So you need your okay. So instead of that, have a driver's license, need your estate planning done. There's
And
just
the term estate planning, unfortunately, has, in my opinion, a negative connotation, because a lot of people think of it dying. and they think
Mm.
about a will, and it's not. As I mentioned, my friend's daughter, she survived, and my friend had to go through the rigmarole of hiring counsel, going through the court process. Had her daughter had a power of attorney in place, she wouldn't have had to spend thousands of dollars going through the court system. So it's not about dying. Although estate planning, people think wealth and they think, oh, it's a will. And unfortunately, it's not. Those are part of it, but
Yeah,
not
but
all
not
of
all
it.
of it.
Yeah.
And when I worked in senior living, for many of you who know me, I've moved over 360 seniors into senior living, and then 300 of them was when I was in senior living. So, I've moved quite a bit of people into senior living. And one of the questions that we always asked was, we had a questionnaire where they moved in, and they had to have this filled out. You needed to have your durable power of attorney. We needed to have your will. We needed to have your advance directives. It was a requirement in order to move into senior living,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a state regulated requirement, no matter what state you live in the U.S. And so, underneath all of that, you had to write in, do you have your burial information? Like, did you pre-plan for your burial plot? And where is it? And what local funeral home have you connected with? Now, people would look at that and say, oh my gosh, this is so morbid. I understand. I understand. However, when I moved down here, because remember I used to do this up in Connecticut. When I moved down here, no one's really from down here. They always come from somewhere else. And when you meet a native person from Florida, you're like, oh, I'm so excited to meet you, right? But when I would meet with them, they would say, yes, we're from Chicago. This is where our family burial plot is. My husband and I are here. Our kids are over here. And I would say, great. How are you getting there? And they would say, what do you mean? I said, well, if one of you passes, we need a permit to put you on the plane, and we need to have you leave the community. If you pass away in senior living community, only a licensed funeral home can come in to retrieve the body. And this is very sad. Nobody ever wants to talk about it. And it really brings up a lot of emotion for people. But we're required by law to, do certain steps, right? And there's only so many people in this nation that can declare someone who's passed away deceased. And so there's a very small amount. And so if they didn't have someone, we would have to recommend a local funeral home to actually help them. Now, in the country, and this is the other thing that I learned, didn't know this until I lived down here in Florida. In the whole United States, majority of the funeral homes, moratoriums, are owned by four top funeral home companies. So a lot of them that you see is Dignity Memorial, and you'll see like Hodges Funeral Home in Naples is owned by Dignity Memorial. Dignity Memorial is the parent company, and they partner with other Dignity Memorial funeral homes nationwide, so that if you have your burial plot that's in Wisconsin, you can get reciprocal benefits back and forth depending on the package that you chose. Now,
Sure.
they're easy to review, but if you didn't have transportation in there, you have to pre-purchase that transportation. And I want to say it was $800 the last time I checked, to fly someone up, because you need a permit to get on the plane. You need to have clearance to get them there. And a licensed funeral home has to bring the casket on to at the airport, right? Big deal.
Yep.
And people would look at us like why are you talking about this? This is terrible. And it's because we've seen what happens when we don't have the planning.
That's right.
And so everyone who moves down here, even when I'm helping them with the real estate transaction, I'm asking them that, because I've seen it turn into, when someone passes away, I do not care if you knew they were going to pass away because they were on hospice or if it was a sudden death. It happens in two different ways, right? It's
Yep.
never expected. Even when you're on hospice and they say mom or dad or your loved one get put on hospice and they have a life expectancy of 2 months, and 2 weeks, if that person passes away, you are never mentally prepared for that. The grief hits you, boom, right in the face. And you now are set with all of these chains of things, the chains of emotions, chains of events that have to get put into place and planning, 9 times out of 10, the normal human being cannot function to make sure all of that happens without being completely overwhelmed. So we try to pre-plan and pre-avoid this so that you are now celebrating their life. And if
Mhm.
you've noticed, a lot of our funeral homes down here have life celebration centers. They have life celebration ceremonies for them so that you're trying to remember all the good times that have happened. And now it's a celebratory memorial service and not your typical funeral, which can be very sad and upsetting. So I know this all sounds morbid, but unfortunately, we know that there are two things in life that we have: death and taxes. Um, you got to plan for both of them. So within both of those, you got to get your advance directives done. You got to get your will done, your power of attorneys done. And I think the national stat is it still like 67% of Americans don't have their estate planning done?
Over 60, yeah. And if I may add something to the funeral arrangements, a couple of years ago, I had a client who passed. She had not documented. I came late into her life, right before she was passing. Long story short, the children were in conflict as to what to do with her mother. We almost had to go to court, believe it or not, because the funeral home cannot release the body unless both children agree. However, if you actually have it in writing that says, I want my oldest son, for example, to make decisions, then he is going to make decisions. And obviously you should have said, what do you want, cremation or burial, and how, I when, etc., so to speak. So in our firm, because of this event, we now make it mandatory that at least the agent is appointed, so the family doesn't have to go to court, and tell the family what you want, cremation or burial. And then a colleague of mine I spoke to this week, he actually did have a case that went to court because one daughter was saying, let's do a cremation because it's cheap. And the other daughter is like, mom wanted burial, let's do a burial. And they went to court over this in Ohio. So highly, highly also recommend pre-planning because you lock in the rates, but also you've documented in multiple places with a funeral home, with your attorney, what your wishes are and who do you want to be in charge. It's not morbid. And I can tell you from talking to the children, they are so thankful their parents did their planning because, like you said, at the time when it happens, you are not ready. It happened to me. I was not ready. I knew my father was sick, but when it happens, it's a different life event that you have never experienced before because none of us have had our parents pass away before, to have experienced it. It happens once with your father, once with your mother. And if it's the first time, you are never prepared for it. So
No.
the more the parents have done, the easier it is for their family. And it avoids as much conflict as possible. It does not eliminate. There are some children who want to create conflict because they can and want, but it often helps, makes things much smoother for the family.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, I enjoyed our conversation today. This is really important for everyone to know. If someone wants to get in touch with you, Anita, what's the best way they can do that?
The easiest way would be to call 239 or they can go online. The law firm name is Kushi, Kushi law firm. We're in Naples, Florida, and we focus primarily on estate planning, probate, and trust administration. We do not handle any other type of cases, so this is our focus. And we're committed to it, and we're very thankful for this conversation to have people at least learn what they should be doing so they can at least help themselves and their loved ones to make things as smooth as possible.
Wonderful. I love that. And stay tuned for more of these fun podcasts that we have coming up, just to share information, share the wealth, and make sure that we are prepared for our future. So once again, thanks so much for joining us. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Just stop the recording.